Today, I want to use a trite opening. And the opening is this. I've got some good news, and I got some bad news. Now, it's trite, I know, but it's accurate in this case. The good news is this. The good news is that God has a plan for your life that's filled with potentiality. It's filled with righteousness. It's filled with reward. It's filled with satisfaction. The bad news is you're probably not going to like a lot of it. You see, when God's plan collides with our plan and our planned life, it almost always is a train wreck. Because, unless you're somewhat different than I, all the plans that you have made and I have made have to do with making my life better or your life better. More comfortable, more secure, more fulfilled, less stress. You know what I mean? But that isn't what God has for you. More good news, bad news. The bad news is He doesn't care about you being happy. Now, that's not totally true. But His primary concern is that you be holy. Now, if the pecan ice cream diet would make you holy, that's what He'd give you. If the gentle, sweet, prosperous, satisfying life is what brought us to our knees before God and turned our egos inside out, that's what He'd do. I want to tell you about a lady, young lady, relatively. And I don't know how or why, but she owned a bar and grill. You know what a bar and grill is? I know you're largely Baptist, but a bar and grill. And this woman, have you ever heard the phrase, plan your work and work your plan? She's the one who wrote it. Her life was planned to a T. And here's the truth. She would do whatever it took to accomplish her plan. Hear me. She would do whatever it took. She wasn't afraid of anything. She wasn't afraid of anybody. Because she had a plan. She owned this bar and grill. It was in a resort town by a river. Her home had a view. She had all of her family around her. People in town respected her. Well, I don't know if they respected her, but they were drawn to her. The authorities in town kept a close watch on her, partially because she was probably the richest person in town. But this woman had a life set. She knew where she was going, financially secure. Her taxes were paid. Her mortgage was up to date. Her car payments were all made. She was good with the world, and the world was good with her. Then there was this day. And I can see her in my mind's eye. She's scrubbing down the bar, putting the peanuts in the little jar. They still do that, don't they? You know. None of you are going to imagine, are you? You're not going to acknowledge. Yeah, they still do. The peanuts in the jar. Now, when you know, and the hard-boiled eggs, and she was doing all that stuff, and these two guys walk in, and with them came this cold wind, and somehow, we're not sure how, somehow she knew her life had just changed. I believe in what they've called women's intuition. I don't know that it's really as mystical. I just think that women often are paying more attention than men. Men generally are worried about who threw the touchdown. Women are concerned with what people are thinking and what people are doing. But she had these guys hang. And she knew that her whole life was going to change. She didn't know how, but she could see it coming. So she sits down with them, and they order a sandwich and a beer, and she brings it, and she sits down with them, and while they're eating their sandwich and they're drinking their beer, she says, "You guys aren't safe here." She said, like they say in the South, "You aren't from around here, are you?" It was obvious they were not from around here, and she saw the danger. She said, "The police will be here quickly because they're always watching my place. Follow me." So when they finished their sandwich and the beer, she took them up on the roof, and she said, "You guys stay here for a little while I figure this out." She went downstairs to face the police. You know the story. You know what I'm talking about? Her name was Rahab. The Bible is not kind to her reputation. She was a woman who would do whatever it takes. She went downstairs and the police came, and she said, yes, you know they were here. They were representatives of a foreign government, and they were here, but they're gone now. What do you call that? Well, not all of us call it a lie, but it was a lie. Ethicists ever since have been trying to figure out why God blessed it. But this woman, God's plan had invaded her plan. And her plan was coming to an end. And somehow she knew this. And she wasn't going to stand idly by and whine and complain and beg. She was going to take action. And she could see there was two sides. She could be on God's side and go with Him, or she could die. You know, you and I are often in the same kind of situations. We're just not always as smart as her. So she goes back upstairs, and she says to these guys, "I don't know anything about you." Now, she probably was insightful enough, since she was female, to look over the wall. Because she owned the Jericho Bar and Grill. And Jericho is an oasis. Now you come down the Wadi Kilt out of Jerusalem, and it winds. It's the only way up. And so it sits right there, this oasis, right on the Jordan River. It's a garden spot. And if you look across, it goes up to Mount Nebo, just like this. And there's 2 million people up there. She probably saw them. And every one of those 2 million people has a different plan for Jericho than she did. She says to the spies, she says, "Your God is the God of heaven and earth." How did she know that? I have no idea. And she says, "Your God is going to give you this land." I know that. And everybody here is terrified of you. But she didn't say, "Is everybody's terrified but me?" Because I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you get out of this mess. But if I do, here's what you're going to do. You and your God are going to protect me. As far as I can tell in the Scriptures, one of the few times where a person made a deal with God and ended up in the right place. Now, there's some insight in the New Testament about her. If we go to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 30, it says this: "It was by faith that the people of Israel marched around Jericho for 7 days and the walls came crashing down. It was by faith that Rahab the prostitute was not destroyed. She believed God was going to do something, and she aligned with him. Now, this sermon is an intro to the book of Romans that I'm going to start on Kickoff Sunday. I was going to do a study. I am going to do a study on the book of John, of Jesus' life through the book of John, but it's going to be after Christmas. I want to do a study because the book of Romans is about living in right standing with God. It's all about living in right standing with God. This woman of ill repute, self-centered, self-protecting, was standing on God's side. And she did it because she believed he was going to do something, and she was going with him. Now, the book of Hebrews adds a little more about this woman. It was by faith that Rahab the prostitute was not destroyed, and the people in her city refused to obey. James said, in the same way was not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did. She didn't just believe in God, say, oh, God's going to do something great. She said, I'm going to tie in with God, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help you get away, but you're going to come back and rescue me, and you and your God are going to deliver me because I'm going to get you out of here. They said, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to tie a red rope around the window sash. Interesting, it was red, don't you think? A red rope. Not only did she believe that God was doing something, she risked everything. She risked her life. Because if somebody would have happened to look up and see the red rope before the Israelites got there, what do you suppose they would have thought? Oh, look, Rahab has redecorated her window. Now, she also knew that she was about to lose everything she had to go with God. She was going to lose the Jericho Bar and Grill. She was going to lose everything but her family because she had made provision for them in this deal with them. God's plan had intervened and collided with hers. Let me ask you about yours. You ever had that happen to you? You ever had God's plan interfere with yours? I suspect if not, either you're not a Christian or you just haven't been a Christian long enough. It's inevitable. Why? Because all of our plans have to do with us and our good fortune and our ease and our prosperity. All of God's plans have to do with his kingdom and how he can perfect us by burning off all the junk in our lives. Always comes with tears. It always comes with pain. It always comes with some desperation. And in my experience, it always comes with a sense of his abandonment. I wish it were not so. I wish I could say to you, like the guys on TV, just come to church and he's going to make you rich. He's going to make all your stock portfolios rise. He's going to make your wife prettier, going to make your husband handsomer, going to make your children smarter. They're all going to get into Yale, going to give you a Lexus to drive. I wish I could say that with any sense that that's what the Bible says. If I could find one place there. Jesus said, in this life, you will have tribulation. You see, God has to tear down my ego. That's painful. I suspect yours too. He's got to cut out those little areas in my life that I keep trying to hold on to, like control. I mean, it even happens here in the church. We started this church 25 years ago. Now, we sat down with God and we told him, here's how you're going to do it for us. Here's our plan. Look at this. Isn't this a good plan? This is a wonderful plan. You just go with us. We got it figured out. We read the books. And the surprising thing was, for a while, God said, okay. And we grew. And we did pretty well. But then God kept saying, you know, Ross, it looks to me like your congregation is getting a mile wide and about 1.5 inches deep. You're going to have to start working with these people because these people need to follow me better. And then he said, Ross, you need to follow me better. Oh no, Lord. I got a plan. I got it all figured out. Look, I got it written out. It's in a daytimer. You know what a daytimer is. He says, yes, Satan invented that. No. Every time in my life when I've got a plan, God changes it. Because I don't naturally do. But God said, my ways are not your ways. And he says, Ross, your ways are not my ways. The way you think is not the way I think. I want you to just follow me. Give it all up. Sacrifice it all. Be willing to let it all go, and I'll give you life. That's what Rahab knew. I'm going to let the Jericho Bar and Grill go. I'm going to let everything go. The whole city's going to go. But me and my family, we're going with God at whatever cost. I would like to be able to stand here and tell you of one time in my life where I honestly, before God, was able to say that with all of my heart. Whatever it costs, I'm with you. I say it, and then I always have this little reservation. What about this? Or I say it, and then I whine the whole time. Is it over yet? Are we there yet? I'm hungry. I gotta go pee-pee. I don't know why he hasn't left me in the desert somewhere. So I tell you, sometimes it feels like that. Then all of a sudden I find he's there and he sweeps me along. I don't know why. But what I know is that Rahab was willing, this woman of ill repute, this woman that our world, our Christian world, would reject all the way through, had the heart and the will to follow God, whatever the cost. Now, remember Dr. Phil? How'd that work for her? Do you know how it worked for her? I think one of the spies' name was Solomon. I can't prove it. And I think from the time she saw him, her heart went pee-pat. God often throws a sweetener into the deal when he's asking me to die for him. How about you? He does. Now what I do know is that this guy named Solomon had a son whose name was Boaz. Boaz was the grandfather of David, the greatest king Israel has ever known. And Boaz's mother's name was Rahab. She was put, this whore, this Gentile whore, was put into the line of Christ. Tell me God can't redeem anything in our lives. He can take our worst and make it into his best. Why do we resist him so? As we go into the book of Romans, there are some shocks that I have for you, I think, out of the book of Romans, because I think lots of people have misunderstood the whole point. It's all about what does it take to stand in right standing with God. It doesn't take perfection. It takes somebody who's willing to say, that's where God's going. I'm going with him at any cost. I want the worship team to come. Because it always, hear me well, it always, if we say God's going there, I'm going with him, it will always come with pain. No exceptions. It'll always come with heartbreak. It'll always come with a sense of discouragement. It will always come with a sense of isolation. It will always, because it is so foreign to our natural way. They will come. These mercies will come disguised. Because they will look like trials and tribulations. They will look like attacks from Satan. But the promise of God is this: I will make everything that happens to you good for you. Everything. And it's not accidental that he says in the end, and then I will wipe away